Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I just want to talk to you a little bit about the idea that you think that you're too messed up or too far gone for God to reach you or for you to ever be healed or to be restored or just to be okay again, you know? Because a lot of times we all kind of, we get to points in life where we just feel like everything is screwed up. Like everything it's beyond repair. We cannot make it better no matter what we do. Everything we try just makes things worse. And and sometimes even if things in your life are going great, you still have this emptiness inside, this brokenness inside because of things that happened to you in the past or things that people have said, stuff like that. I mean, I've gone through that too, and I really felt like the Lord kind of gave me this little word to just kind of encourage you and to help you realize that you are not too far gone. And as you can see, my cat is now leaving because I'm talking to somebody besides her. She's very spoiled. I'm sorry if you can hear her meow. She'll probably talk this whole time. And I can't put her outside of the room because then she'll just scream really loud. Okay, good. She's gonna eat right next to me. So, first off, I'm gonna read to you a story out of Luke, chapter 5, verses 12 to 15. And I got my little Bible here, so I'm gonna read to y'all. And I do have my notes, so if you notice me like staring really hard, it's because I'm looking at my notes. And I'm so sorry, my hair here keeps kind of going crazy in my face. Okay. It's not as cute, but it'll be fine. Okay, Luke 5 verses 12 to 15. All right. While Jesus was in one of the towns, a man came along who was covered with leprosy. When he saw Jesus, he fell with his face to the ground and begged him, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. "I am willing," he said, "be clean." And immediately the leprosy left him. Then Jesus ordered him, "Don't tell anyone, but go and show yourselves to the priest and offer the sacrifices that Moses commanded for your cleansing as a testimony to them." Yet the news about him spread all the more, so that crowds of people came to hear him and to be healed of their sickness. Now, that might just sound like a kind of a simple, short little story about Jesus healing and basically what the Bible would have considered a defiling skin disease. But if you look in Leviticus chapter 13, verses 45 and 46, I'm not going to turn to it because I have the notes written on it, but it basically gives the whole chapter of like 13 is all about what the priest and the people should do if they think they have a defiling skin disease, which skin diseases are extremely contagious and highly infectious, and it's very difficult to get rid of them sometimes. So because of that, God put specific rules and regulations and ways to determine if it was contagious and dangerous or if it wasn't, and what to do if it was, and all this kind of stuff. So that's all basically what chapter 13 is. But chapter 13 verses 45 to 46 lays out 6 things that if you had a defiling skin disease that would not clear up, would not go away, these 6 things that you had to do. And so the people with these defiling skin diseases had to wear torn clothes. They could not wear just normal cutesy fun clothes. They had to wear torn clothes. They had to let their hair be unkempt, so no cuts, no brushes, no washes. They had to let it just be how it is. They had to cover the lower part of their face. So I don't know if that would be considered just the mouth or if it would be considered up over the nose too. I don't know exactly what it is, but the lower part of the face had to be covered. They had to cry out, "Unclean, unclean." Anytime anyone even looked their way, they had to yell, "Unclean," so people would know that they had a defiling skin disease or a skin disease that would make them unclean. And then number 5, they had to live alone, and number 6, they had to live outside of the camp. So not only does that mean that they couldn't live with their families or, with their friends, they absolutely had to live outside, away from all of society. They just could not be part of it anymore. I was definitely kind of thinking, I'm like, these are really harsh, like it's just it's a skin disease. Why does it have to be so ridiculously harsh on them because of these things? well, when more I thought about them, these rules actually seem to be merciful in their origin. You know, like that was what God was going for. Is He actually made these rules? They seem very harsh, but they're actually very merciful. And I'll explain to you how. Because these rules put the people with the highly contagious and incurable diseases in quarantine, it protected the rest of the community. It kept the rest of literally the nation, kept the rest of the nation safe and healthy, especially while they were in the desert. And then whenever they entered the promised land and set up cities and things, it kept the cities safe. I mean, at this point, we've all realized how quarantine is, and quarantine probably was not fun for them, but it did keep the people who weren't sick, it kept them very safe. And also, because of the face covering that they had to wear over the lower part of their face, it allowed the afflicted person to remain anonymous so that they would not be shamed and, you know, ridiculed and made fun of. That wouldn't be able to happen to them because no one would know who they were. And also, it protected their family. Because a lot of times, once people got this, they probably, you know, they already had families and jobs and things like that. And we know how people are. If it got around to other people that this guy, let's say, you know, this man who's a father, a husband, a business owner, if it got around to the rest of the community that he had this horrible disease, well, then more likely than not, the rest of his family, his wife and his children, would be ostracized. People would have immediately thought that they were unclean, that they were gross, that they needed to be set apart and all this. Even though they actually weren't sick, it was the father and the husband that was sick. But thankfully, this allowing to cover the bottom part of the face allowed that man, would allow the man or the woman, whoever, to remain anonymous so that their family would not face all this persecution and ridicule and things like that. And, okay, the next thing is, because they were required to live outside of the camp of the city, it protected those people who were sick from the people of the city, because honestly, we're humans and we get scared of things that we don't fully understand, that we can't really control. And that's what these skin diseases were. They couldn't really be controlled. Being able to trace infections and seeing what was causing the infection, that kind of technology and scientific understanding was in its early infancy. I won't say that it wasn't still there, because they were able to tell, you know, oh, this kind of food will make you feel this way, or this or that, or when this happens to you, you can get healed like this. But it was in its very early stages of infancy. Like, contact tracing was not a thing. There were not dedicated contact tracers, and so because of that, if these people who were very sick, especially with the skin diseases, they would have been probably attacked and probably killed by the people in the city, because nobody really understood what the disease was, how they got it, how they could prevent themselves from catching it. And so, you know, humans, we get scared. We want to kill or get rid of whatever we don't understand or what's scaring us. So the infected people living outside of the city was actually protection for them. And then I just want to say this so all of these rules and regulations concerning these things were in Leviticus chapter 13. As I was saying, the Leviticus chapter 14 the majority of it is dedicated to allowing the people with these defiling skin diseases to become cleansed, and what they could do once the skin had cleared up and they had been healed, all healed up and healthy again, what they could do to be able to enter into society again and basically be restored back to the position that they had. And oh my gosh. Now, yes, Grace. Oof. This is the little one. Whoops, you're slipping. This is the little one that y'all are going to keep hearing probably in every one of my videos. Now, she's having some skin problems, but I'm not going to make her live outside. The story of the man, the man with leprosy in Luke chapter 5. Okay, so this man basically risked everything that he had left, just on the little chance that Jesus would be able to heal him, make him clean again, so that he could have his life back. Just the chance, okay? Because honestly, he had already lost He'd already probably lost his home, his family, his friends, his job, and even his freedom to be able to go to the temple and worship God. He didn't even have that ability anymore. And one thing that I'm sure you can tell, I'm American, and so one thing that we Americans absolutely love and cherish is our freedom of religion, you know. I'm personally obviously a Christian, but one thing about America that's great is that we accept all religions. We give you the freedom to worship. And so, gosh, I can't imagine how that would be if I became sick and then I was no longer allowed to go to church and to worship God and to do any of that, you know. This man knew that if Jesus refused to help him, if Jesus was just like, nope, not doing it, you know, he could probably face some very severe punishment. He could probably be beaten, stoned, maybe even killed. Not 100% sure on that, but he was in the middle of the town where he was not supposed to be. He's supposed to live outside of the town alone. He met Jesus in the town. He went into the town, which is one, against the law, and then two, he came and he threw himself at Jesus' feet. He did not identify himself as unclean, but just threw himself at the feet of a well person and well and healthy person, and that could bring some serious trouble on him. But the reason he did it was out of desperation. He had lost everything. He had nothing left really except his life, and he probably was feeling like his life wasn't even worth living at this point. So out of his desperation, he did this. His desperation overcame his logical thinking, because each and every one of us, every human, no matter where you are, there's a thing in your brain, I don't know what it's called, but if my pastor's watching this, he probably knows what it's called, that your body and your mind refuses to give up. You have this insane drive to live, and it's people, I mean, you will literally fight to the death. If you feel like you're about to die or someone's about to kill you, you will fight to the death. And that's just a natural preservation mechanism that God put in our minds, our bodies, and this man was able to overcome that out of pure desperation. Just on the chance that maybe he could be made well. He threw himself on the ground in front of Jesus in total vulnerability. He says that he threw himself, let's see, I'm gonna look. He fell with his face to the ground. I don't know if any of you have ever fallen with your face on the ground. You are basically helpless. You cannot see anything. You can kind of hear some stuff, you know, unless you have hair that covers your ears. But you cannot see yourself. You cannot see around you, and you cannot defend yourself. You are totally vulnerable when you're on the ground on your face, and you just have to trust that the people around you are not going to step on you. But he did this. He placed himself in total vulnerability and surrender. And then he spoke in faith. He didn't ask Jesus. He didn't outright ask Jesus to heal him. And it was probably, maybe he was scared. You know, maybe, I know sometimes when I have to ask my parents or my friends for something, I don't necessarily come right out and ask them because I'm nervous that they'll say no. And that's kind of what this guy did. He was probably really nervous that Jesus would refuse his request. So he figured if he did get rejected, it probably wouldn't hurt as much if he didn't outright say the request and kind of, you know, tiptoed around it, you know. And that's what he did. He said, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." And that's not exactly a request, and it might not seem like a lot of faith, but instead, he made that statement that showed faith, in that he knew that Jesus could do it. He knew that he could. He was scared to ask if he would, but he knew that he could, and he let Jesus decide. He said, you know, if you can do it, then do it. Instead of saying, will you do it? He just wanted, and it's probably, I'm telling you, it's probably out of fear of the request being rejected, because that's how I ask questions sometimes. I'm like, hey, if you want, we could go do such, such. And that way, if they say no, it's like, oh no, you're just rejecting the idea, you're not rejecting me. Oh my gosh, this is the mind of somebody with, who struggled in the past with anxiety and depression. That's what I used to ask all the time. What Jesus did next was probably not exactly what the guy was expecting. Because what Jesus did next says, Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. Now, first off, it was against the law for the man to be in town where he could be touched. And next, it was against the law for Jesus to touch him. Because when Jesus touching him, it means that now Jesus, according to the law, would be unclean. But when Jesus touched him anyway, he did not just break these cultural laws, he did it to restore the man's dignity. Think about that. He touched the man, and through that touch, he restored the man's dignity. He touched him just like Jesus touched him just like he would have done for anybody else. The man was treated like there was nothing wrong with him. Jesus treated him like any other normal person. And he treated him with respect that this man had probably not experienced in a long time. Now, I know if you're out there and you're watching this and, you feel like you were just the worst of the worst and there is no one worse than you out there in the world, that you are the worst person in the world. Sometimes when people find out the things that you've done, they treat you different. They look at you different. They say things around you differently. One of the scariest things is telling anyone anything that you've ever done in the past that you're ashamed of, because they can treat you differently after that. But Jesus made this point and touched the man, treating the man like there was nothing wrong with him. Now, I gotta tell you this story real fast. This was several years back. I had done something, I'm not gonna talk about it today. I had done something that I was 120% not happy about. I was so ashamed, and I was like, oh my God, why did I do this? And I had a best friend at the time. She's still my best friend, but we don't talk as much because our lives have just gone different ways, but I still love her. And I was like, I have to tell her. We're best friends. I'm literally staying at her house for several days. I have to tell her what I did, or I'm just going to be miserable, and she's going to be wondering what the heck is wrong with me. So I finally got up the courage, and I was like, look, girl, I got to tell you something, okay? And I just told her. And her response was, it was amazing. This is one of the reasons why she's still my best friend, and I absolutely love her. I told her what I had done, and she was like, okay, I know. I was like, what do you mean you know? She said, oh, God told me like a month ago. God like put it on my heart that that's probably what had happened and that you were probably going to tell me. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was so astonished because she had known for all this time, for a couple weeks or so, of what I had done and hadn't treated me any different. She had treated me just like I had been, like she had before I had done this thing. I didn't even know that she knew. That's how well she treated me. And so when someone finds out what you did wrong or something that's wrong with you and still treats you like it's not an issue, it's the most amazing, refreshing thing. And that's what Jesus did to this man. Jesus knew the sins that this man had done, and he knew the disease that the man had. But he didn't treat him any differently. He still treated him like a person and with respect. When we come to Jesus, I know these transitions are kind of crazy, but it's my mind. When we come to Jesus in all of our mess and all of our brokenness to be saved and restored, he first wants to restore our dignity. He touches us in our filthy, disgusting, awful, just terrible state, and he makes us respectable again. Whenever I do something wrong and I come to God and I tell him, I'm like, God, I did this, I did that, I'm so ashamed, I'm terrible, I did this. He doesn't scold me, he doesn't yell at me, he doesn't treat me bad. Instead, he goes, I know, and I'm glad you're coming to me to talk about it. He restores my dignity. Because whenever you sin and you do things that you know you're not supposed to do, you do things that are very shameful, you kind of stop feeling like a person. You kind of start feeling more like a worm. Like you don't really have any value or anything. But when we go to God, he restores our dignity and says, I know what you did, and I still love you. I know what you did, and I'm glad you're here to talk about it because I want to change you so that you never do it again. I'm not here to yell at you. I'm here to make you better. And, Jesus didn't say that to this man, but that's what he was doing then, and that's what he does for us. He restores our dignity even when we are absolutely disgusting. That's one of the great things about becoming a Christian, is that all of a sudden all these things that you used to do that you're ashamed of, once you become a Christian, it's like they don't bother you anymore. They're still bad and they're still wrong, and you should still be sorry for them, but you don't feel the shame about it. You don't feel like you're a terrible person because you did it. Instead, you understand that I did a terrible thing, but I'm not a terrible person. I have done awful things, but that doesn't mean I'm an awful person. I am not defined by what I've done in the past. You see what I'm saying? So Jesus first restores our dignity. He first restored that man's dignity by touching him and treating him like an actual person, rather than kicking him back out of the town and telling him he had to go live alone by himself and suffer. Jesus' touch on our hearts is what makes us free and makes us no longer slaves to sin, where we no longer have to constantly fall back into the same things. The next thing Jesus said to the man is the man said, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." So Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man, and the next thing that Jesus said is, "I am willing." He let the man know that his presence was not a burden. No matter the size of our sin or the magnitude of our brokenness, we are not a burden to Jesus. He's willing to help us. Now, I stated a couple minutes ago that I used to struggle with anxiety and depression. I still struggle with it a little bit, but I do have some very mild medication that helps, because depression and anxiety is not only a spiritual thing in your heart, sometimes it can be a thing in your brain, where your brain is just not making the appropriate chemicals in the appropriate portions that it needs to. But anyway, I know that when I was really struggling with that, with the more spiritual and in your mind kind of aspects of things, with depression and anxiety, is, oh my gosh, I felt like a burden to everybody. Even my parents, my family, people who loved me, who would die for me, I still felt like I was the biggest burden. And I bet this man did too. This man had nothing. He couldn't work. He couldn't get a job. He had to scrounge for food and rely on the kindness of others to survive. He probably felt like the biggest burden, but Jesus said to him, "I'm willing. I'm willing to cleanse you. I'm willing to stop what I'm doing. I'm willing to look you in the eye and help you, because you are not a burden." That's what Jesus says to us. So if you are feeling like you are just a burden and you're a problem and you're dragging people down and you're slowing them down and you're just ruining their lives, Jesus says to you, "I am willing to handle your problems. I am willing to carry you. You are not a burden." All right? You're not a burden to Jesus. Okay? I don't care what anyone says. There are some people out there who are terrible and mean, and they will tell you that you are a burden, but Jesus never will. You are never a burden to Jesus. He is always desiring for you to come and to talk to him, no matter what it is. Because he loves just hearing your voice. He loves talking to you. He loves being there for you, because you are not a burden. To Jesus, you are a gift. Okay? Okay. Next, Jesus cleansed the man. He said, "Be clean." After Jesus saves us and restores our dignity and shows us his love and that we are not a burden to him, Jesus removes the things in our lives that got us into the... Let me rephrase that. Jesus then removes the things in our lives that got us into that position in the first place. Let's say that you started stealing things. You started lying, doing all this, and once you do one bad thing, one sin, it tends to just continue to build. It's not just a lateral building where it's like, oh, I lie. It's first I lie, then I gotta cover that lie, then I gotta cover that lie, then I gotta steal something to cover the lie, and it just builds and builds and builds until you get to the place where you're like this man with leprosy. You're broken and you're alone and there's no one around you, and you know, you're broken. That's the best way I can describe it, is you're broken. After you allow Jesus to save you, he restores your dignity. He shows you his love, and then he takes those things in your heart out of your heart so that you don't end up in that same position. So if you are a liar and you are constantly lying, Jesus will come in and he will work with you to help you to stop lying. Now, it's not immediate. Now, that's probably not what you're wanting to hear. Now, there are some testimonies of people who were drug addicts, alcoholics, all this stuff. They finally came to God. They came to the cross, they fell on their knees before God, and he instantly removed all the cravings for those things. That's not everybody. Okay? And it's okay if you continue to struggle. If you lie a lot and you get saved and you continue to lie, it's okay as long as you are constantly going back to Jesus and saying, I'm sorry, change me. Now, it's not okay if you get saved and you keep lying, and you don't care, and you just keep doing it. That's not okay. That is not letting yourself be sanctified and be made into the image of Christ. That is not okay. But if you lie, if you have lust, if you're greedy, you're selfish, it's okay to struggle with those things as long as you are continually bringing them back to God and saying, God, I freaking suck. Okay, that's the plainest way I can say it. God, I freaking suck, and I don't want to anymore. I want to be better. I want to be more like you. God will work with you to change those things. It might be painful. He might say, hey, you know why you lie all the time? It's because your mother mistreated you. It's because you couldn't get what you needed when you were a child, so you had to lie to get it. Jesus is going to go back, and he wants to fix those wounds in your heart that cause you to sin. Now, I will tell you, from experience, it is not a pleasant journey. It's not. Because a lot of times it involves you having to relive those things that hurt you. It involves you having to relive those words that people said to you that were so mean and so uncalled for that hurt you. For years that hurt you. Sometimes you have to go back. But the good thing is, this time when you go back and relive those moments and those words, Jesus is with you. And it's gonna hurt, but it's not gonna hurt the same way. And if you submit yourself to this journey, and this is firsthand experience, okay? This is Chris. This is firsthand experience, okay? I went through a lot of things when I was younger, and that'll be a different story for a different video. But I went through abuse, rejection, being mistreated and bullied, and all these things. And when I finally came to God and I was like, all right, God, I don't want to be this way anymore. I don't want to be mean anymore. I don't want to be hateful and angry all the time. Jesus said, okay, I'll change you, but we have to go back. And he had to take me through those different moments, those memories. And piece by piece, I had to say, God, you take this memory. I don't want it. It sucks and it hurts, and I surrender it to you. And once I did that, then God would begin to heal it. And slowly, it wouldn't hurt me as much. Slowly, when I would remember the things that my sister said to me, eventually the pain would go away more and more. And now I can remember those times and those words that were spoken to me by someone I loved, and they don't hurt. It doesn't even bother me anymore. I mean, I can go and I can talk for an hour about the horrible things that my sister or people at school or other people that said to me, or things that happened to me, and I'm not bothered. And it's not I'm not bothered, but secretly inside I'm still kind of bothered and I really wish we wouldn't talk about it. It's no, 100% not bothered. So let me back it up a little bit and finish with my little closing. I was actually going to tell you about all the depression, anxiety at the end of this video, but I've already kind of told you the gist of it. And I'll tell you the whole full story in a different video, because it's pretty amazing what happened to me and how God saved me. It was absolutely amazing. And after he saved me like that, I've never been able to turn away from him. It's great, and I will make a video on that, so don't you worry and don't you get all antsy, because it's coming. So let me just finish with these last few statements, okay? Because otherwise I will talk forever, okay? You guys who knew me in Master's Commission know I can talk forever. So here we go. I'm trying to find where I am in my notes. I'm so sorry. Okay. The man with leprosy could not help his leprosy. It was a part of him. And there was nothing he could do to stop it, to get rid of it. There was nothing. It was just there. It was part of him. Some of our sins are like that. Some of our addictions are the things that we know are bad. We know that these things are bad, but we just can't seem to get away from them, no matter what we do. They're constantly there. Jesus can fix that. Just like this man could not help his leprosy, Jesus could. Just like we cannot help some of these sins and addictions and terrible things that we cannot get away from, that we cannot stop doing, Jesus can help us. He can fix us. Only Jesus was able to get rid of that leprosy, and only Jesus, through his shed blood on the cross for us, can save us. The only reason we can be healed and saved and changed and made new again is because of Jesus' blood. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but Jesus died for you. Yes, you. You watching. If you can hear me, then I'm talking to you. Jesus died for you before you even knew about him. Hundreds, thousands of years ago, Jesus died for you. Why? Because God so loved this world and the people in it, including you, that he looked at us and he said, oh my God, my beautiful children, I cannot let them die and be apart from me. Because back in the beginning of time, someone sinned. Someone messed up. And when that happened, we could no longer be close to God. In the beginning of time, man used to walk hand in hand with God. But man sinned. And God is perfectly righteous and holy and cannot coexist with sin. He cannot live with sin. So when man sinned, man was separated from God. Humankind. I don't just mean men. There are some feminist liberals watching. I'm not saying man or men or an evil gender. Mankind, male and female, both sinned and both fell. And we've both been separated from God and from each other. Talk about that later when we talk about Genesis and creation. We were separated from God, okay? And God loved us so much that he couldn't let us go. Anyway, God couldn't let us go. And so from the moment we were separated from God, he had a plan. And it took several thousand years, several hundred, I think, thousand years, I don't know, a long time for that plan to finally be ready and to work out. And that plan was that God was going to send his son, who was also God. God was going to come down in the form of a human and become a sacrifice for us. Because at the beginning, when man was first separated from God, the only way that God could dwell near humanity, not dwell with us, but near us, was through the shedding of blood. Because the wages of sin is death. So when you sin, the only way that you can be made innocent again is through your death. If you sin, you must die. And so what God instituted was sacrifices of animals. Because he wanted humanity to be able to dwell near him and to speak with him. So if humanity constantly sinned and then constantly died, we would have been wiped out millennia ago. So what God did is he said, okay, when you sin, you will sacrifice an animal, a lamb, a goat, and its shed blood will stand in the gap for your blood. so that you don't have to shed your blood. This animal will shed his blood so that you can be close to me again. So God's ultimate plan was for Jesus to come and be that sacrifice for us. Now you might be thinking, well, why don't we just keep sacrificing animals? Because the sacrifice of the animal was only good to cover the sins that had already been committed. It could not cover sins that would be committed, and it could not get us back to God because it was an imperfect sacrifice. Goat blood cannot fully resolve humans of their sins because it's goat blood, it's not human blood. So what God needed was a human who was perfect in every way, who never sinned, who never got infected with sin and fell and was sacrificed, but is not sacrificed, separated. I knew it was an S word. Separated from God. He needed a man that was perfect and never been separated from God. And the only way that that could happen, because all men have fallen short of the glory of God and all men have sinned, the only way that could happen is if God himself became human flesh and died for us. And that's what Jesus did. Jesus came in a human flesh to be the perfect sacrifice, to be a sacrifice of human blood to cover human sin, and to restore God and man's relationship. Jesus died. For you. For you. Jesus loves you. God loves you. I want you to understand too, God did not just throw Jesus out of heaven and tell him he had to do it. No, Jesus willingly wanted to do it so that you could become his brothers and sisters, that we could become children of God. Now you might be wondering, well, that's great. How does that work? It's super simple. All you have to do is accept Jesus' sacrifice. Accept the blood that was shed for you. You have to believe that Jesus really was the Son of God, that he really was God in flesh. He was 100% God, 100% man. I know that equals 200%. Thank you, Yvonne. I know how to count. But you just have to believe. You might not fully understand it. I don't fully understand it. You have to believe it. And then you need to go to God in prayer and confess your sins. What does that look like? God, I'm a sinner. I have lied. I have stolen. I have cheated. But I don't want to anymore. I want to become a follower of you. I want to become one of your children. I accept the sacrifice that Jesus made, and I ask that you would come into my heart and make me clean and make me one of your children. Forgive me of the sins that I have committed and help me not to commit more. Ask it in Jesus' name, and it'll be done. But you have to believe it all in your heart. You can't just repeat things that I've said. It has to be a real thing in your heart that's changed. Only Jesus was able to get rid of the leprosy, and only Jesus can get rid of the things in us that we just can't shake. I don't know how to end this. So that's it. Simple. Admit that you're a sinner. Believe that Jesus was God, that he died for you. Confess your sins, and ask Jesus to come into your heart and make you new. Now, I could go through the motions here and give you the perfect words to say and for you to repeat after me, but that doesn't mean you could say a prayer after me, but that doesn't mean that you're saved, because the prayer has to come from your heart. You do not have to go to him with these eloquent, beautiful words and poetry and sound all, you don't have to go in Latin. You don't have to go and sound amazing and sound beautiful. You can go and you can talk to him in whatever capacity you have to speak. And God will listen. And God will speak back to you in that same capacity so that you can understand. God will come and he will listen to you no matter how you sound, no matter how weird or dumb or ridiculous you think you sound. God will listen and he will respect it if it comes from your heart. And then he will speak to you in a manner that you can understand. Do not limit God on how he can speak to you and how you can speak to him. He's waiting for you. Okay? He's literally waiting by his phone for you. Waiting for you to call on him. Thank you for watching. So please, if you did enjoy this, and if you would like to hear some more teachings that I have, because God gives me some almost every day, then please comment, like, and subscribe down below. Let me know what you think, okay? So, until next time, God bless you. Bye-bye.